Well, welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us today. My name's Andrew Lamb, and I'm excited to have the opportunity to discuss a critical topic in modern business strategies, leveraging both quantitative and qualitative data in decision making. Joining me today is Des Ryan, a fellow business coach and friend of many, many years. Welcome, Des.
Andrew, thanks a million for having me. Looking forward to this interview.
Cool. So as we go through this, we're going to be looking at how making informed decisions are more important than ever. We'll explore how data-driven decision makings can provide a comprehensive view of business performance, guiding strategic decisions and helping avoid the pitfalls and assumptions of emotional decisions. So without further ado, why don't we jump into it, Des? Let's start around how do you integrate key performance indicators, KPIs, into your strategic decision-making progress and ensure you use a data-driven approach?
Love this subject. I love data, and it's probably the most used phrase I ever use with clients and prospects is the closer you are to your figures, the closer you are to your information, the better decisions you're going to make. So I look at KPIs as being absolutely critical to the performance of any business. And again, it's across so many different financial, you mentioned qualitative and quantitative, but it's financial and non-financial KPIs. And it's about making sure that they are easy to read, they're accessible. We don't have too many of them because you can have overkill if you use too many of them. And I suppose it's really, really important that we align the KPIs that we're using with the objectives of the business. Just again to make sure that we're on track and make sure that we are all singing from the same hymn sheet, so to speak, and that we're all following the same figures and the same KPIs.
The same version of the truth, right? One version of the truth.
Yeah, again, it's funny. People love and hate measurements and KPIs for the exact same reason. Mm-hmm. They don't lie, So, but yeah, look, it's real. It's the truth, as they say. Numbers don't lie, and it's like a football match, and it's like any game, any sport that you play. You always know who wins it because you keep the score. And if you look at the measurements that sports teams now use, they know how many meters you've ran, they know where in the pitch you've played. They can track every single piece of information, which allows them to make better decisions, and then they can react and they can revisit things where necessary then,
Yeah. So what specific KPIs do you consider the most critical for assessing a business and why?
So as we mentioned earlier, there's financial ones and non-financial ones. But some of the key ones obviously are revenue growth, customer acquisition cost. Mm-hmm. There's also employee productivity ones there. Lifetime value is also a very, very important one. Yeah. Number of leads coming into a business mm-hmm. would be a crucial one. But equally crucial would be, well, how good are we converting them to actual business? Because I often hear from people and businesses that I need more leads. And that's not always the truth because, well, actually, maybe you're already getting lots of leads in, but you're not 100% sure what you're doing with them. How many of them are you actually converting into business? So that's a really important KPI is what percentage of leads that come into your business actually convert into business. How often do you see them? How often do you do business with that particular customer? Again, is another one. Revenue or sales per transaction or per customer, again, is another key one. And one which I love to question people on because it's often the last place they look at is what profit are you actually making from your business? Whether that's a ratio, whether that's gross profit or net profit. Profit is such a key key performance indicator for me across any industry, across any business. There's no point in being busy unless you're actually making money.
Right. Actually, reminds me of somebody I was talking to this week, and he was talking about his business. He's buying another business to bolt on, and he was talking about slowing the other business down. And I was like, why are you doing that? Right? It's like, well, I'm not sure if I can, how am I going to make the money over here and make the money over there? And I'm like, hold on, let's have a look at your numbers. When we went through his numbers, he was actually turning away work when he needed work because he wasn't looking at the conversion. He's got hundreds of leads coming in, but he's not focused on converting them. And to convert 3 of those leads was like $30,000 a month in revenue, right? On a 50% margin. I was like, why are you're throwing money? You're literally burning money in the fireplace right now by not doing this. And he was like, oh, I didn't think of that, right? So it's putting those numbers together, right, to paint the picture.
But it triggers the exact same question. The closer you are to these figures, the better decisions you're going to make.
Exactly.
So it's amazing. Yeah.
So lots of people have assumptions with regards to their business, right? We all make assumptions about our business. But how do you handle when people make assumptions, but the data directs you in a different direction? How do you handle that with clients?
Yeah, look, the data is generally right. Unfortunately, garbage in, garbage out. So if the information that goes into a system is incorrect or incomplete, then you might get different or incorrect data coming out the other end of it. So I think it can be used as a guide in most cases, but then we need to make sure that we have a little bit of flexibility in just making sure that the strategy is right and that the data, although may not be 100%, is gearing you or leading you a particular way. And I think the other side of it is if there is any kind of doubt, if people are making assumptions around KPIs, that everyone everyone involved in that, so that all stakeholders are involved in the communication process, and that there can be no room to, I suppose, no room for confusion. We need to be all very, very clear that we're on the right path. We're using the data that we've got, and that, yes, sometimes the information, you do have to make assumptions based on the information that you're given, but it's being done in the right way.
Okay, so that brings us on to another question then. So, based on that assumption, so in what ways can businesses avoid the pitfalls of making decisions based upon assumptions rather than solid data?
Look, it's a similar enough question. So I suppose you need to make sure that you implement, I suppose, data validation processes, so that someone is checking the numbers, that you don't automatically assume that every piece of information is correct. You've got to check the data to make sure that it does. Particularly if you're using like an Excel-based spreadsheet or something to generate your information. It's amazing how an incorrect formula or something not adding up properly creates a totally different outcome. And I've come across that many, many times when you've gone in and sense checked a profit and loss account that's been done on an Excel spreadsheet, and you realize there's something wrong with that. It just doesn't make sense. So again, it's about making sure that you do validate the information. And you got to and with that in mind, then you've got to make sure that the people who are inputting the information, the people who are reading the information, are trained to do so. And I think that's really, really important. And then use data-driven decision frameworks, which are available. So again, what do they look like? How do they fit your business? But there are lots of different frameworks out there that one can use to support the use of data, to make sure that we are not using assumptions where solid data is available.
Okay. So when you're working with clients in the past and today, what kind of methodologies or tools have you recommended or you've seen being used to kind of validate these assumptions with data?
I suppose the easy one for me, and it depends on what part of the business you're currently measuring with your KPI. But from a marketing perspective, I would always look at maybe A/B testing, see what's working, what information is coming back on each of the different methods you're trying, which is working stronger. From an ad kind of, if you're A/B testing 2 ads, for example. There's also some business intelligence tools which are available to support the data. And again, to be able to use industry averages. So it's great that you might have a 20% margin or a 10% margin or whatever it is, and that sounds good. But if you're 4 or 5, 10% off where the industry average is, then again, you're not performing where you should be. So again, using industry data would also be very, very beneficial there.
Yeah. I mean, A/B testing, making sure that your goals, right? Setting goals. What is the goal? What's the expected number that we should be looking at? You mentioned looking at industry averages, historical data, right? Could be an easy one to look at. What have you done in the past, right? So if you're just looking inward, and I would always advocate getting somebody externally to look at the numbers, right? A completely impartial judge to kind of look at the numbers. So, when you're talking to your CPA, right? They should be impartial, right? For some of the numbers, right? So get a unreasonable friend to look at your numbers and question them, right?
Yeah, look, it always, getting that third fresh pair of eyes to look at anything is always going to show up things that you may have missed. And you're dead right on historical, the historical side of it. Like how is your business performing versus last year, versus the same quarter last year, versus the targets that you've set for this current period, based on, I suppose, growth on last year. But it's incredible the amount of businesses who do not track that information. They're very busy in their business, and they just don't track it. It's incredible.
They're working in it, not on it, right?
Yeah, 100%. And it's interesting because they know when you ask a question, they know they should know the answer, but they just don't. Right. So it's interesting.
And then we send them off to hunt for it and then figure it out. And then the dawning moment comes across the faces, right? It's like, oh.
but a lot of the times it's an aha moment. It's, oh my God, I didn't realize we were doing so well.
Yeah.
It's not always an own moment. It's, sometimes it's really good news. And again, people are not aware that this is the power and the incredible power of tracking your numbers.
Yeah. So you mentioned team looking at stuff. So how can companies foster a culture that prioritizes data-driven decisions over intuition or tradition? How do you think you can foster that culture?
Yeah, I think it's you need transparency. So I think there needs to be an openness with the numbers there. I think there's a lot of businesses a huge number of them who are afraid to share the numbers with their team. They will give certain KPIs. Non-financial KPIs are acceptable, but a lot of businesses are afraid to give their team the financial figures because it's too much information. So I think transparency is important. I think you got to make sure people are well trained on how to use data and the importance of using data. And it's an improvement tool rather than a penalty kind of a tool. If you approach it that way, as a positive rather than as a tool, as something to hit you with, a stick to hit you with, but more of a view of being positive and impactful on the business, I think it's always going to have better results. And I think the leaders need to endorse it. So that the owners of the business, it has to come from the top. And it also needs to make sure that it has a very visible and obvious place in the business. Let's let's put the figures out there. Let's make sure that they are visible, they are tracked, and they are something which plays a really, really important part of the business on a daily or weekly basis.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I've seen is, numbers and data has been used more of a stick than a carrot. And one of the things that I'm talking to a lot of the people that I work with is, using the data, using the information to ask the team members, how can I help you achieve your goals? Right? So with the use of data. So use the data as an opportunity to ask questions, to delve deeper, to see how you can help them achieve their goals, right? So everybody's clear, as you said, on the standards, the numbers, what needs to be occurring, and then if it's not occurring, ask that, the why. Why is this happening, right? Get to root cause analysis, understand what that is and why is it occurring, and how can you help, them help achieve their goals, right?
Yeah, but and I think there's also this question around consequences and versus benefits. So the benefits of hitting your target are quite often financial, and that you get a bonus for hitting a certain target or whatever. But there's very few consequences at play, and I think that there needs to be a balance there between the two. So, but I think, like I said, there should always be consequences. There should always be a challenge if the figures or the KPIs are not met.
Right. All right, let's jump to another question. So can you share us examples of how quantitative data has revealed insights that qualitative data alone may have just missed?
Okay, an interesting one. So the quantitative stuff based around, I suppose, sales performance metrics, customer behavior analysis is another example of it, and some market trends obviously would be a good indicator of where the quantitative information probably reveals more than qualitative. That's kind of, it's kind of, for me, that's the key areas there. I'm not sure if you wanted to add anything yourself to that, or have you other examples maybe yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I refer to them as the soft metrics, right? So what's going on in the market? What are the trends? Where are things going? What do you see? What are the customers talking about, right? Satisfaction numbers, right? What's in the data? Trying to tease some of that out. Where you may turn around and say, hey, if we're looking at their data, that we're really good in their data, but if you start drilling down into the next levels, we'll start to find areas that are not so good, right? Are not really measurable. What's the feeling? What's the customer sentiment, for example, right? Are we hitting the right mark in those areas? All of these are kind of, the soft metrics that you've got to take some form of decision on. But I always try to back it up with qualitative and, mixing the both together, the qualitative and the quantitative. And if you're making decisions, test and measure, right? Test and measure it to see if you're getting the outcome that you expect to see or require to see. And then again, go back and test and measure, right? I mean, we talk about it all the time. Everything's testing and measuring, right? So if you change one thing, what occurred? One of the challenges I see with lots of businesses when they get into this realm, they try and change 20 different things at the same time. And nobody knows what happened to change the outcome. There may be 3 or 4 things that they can't measure that actually drove it. So be very intentional around changing and measuring outcomes.
Yeah, and I think to be honest with you, it's probably much more qualitative data that we spend most of our time challenging.
Yeah.
And I think that's you're right. I think the quantitative stuff is the softer kind of information that we get rather than the solid data that you get from qualitative and qualitative data. So but I think you're right. It is equally important, all right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we just covered this one, but
Mm.
let's just go through this one anyway. So, how do you ensure that quantitative data is accurately interpreted and effectively communicated to stakeholders?
Yeah, again, I think it's how you display it, how you kind of make it easy to understand. The problem with quantitative data is there's so much of it at times, so you
Right.
need to be able to get a proper visual that pulls all the information together, which gives you again a report that you can actually read and understand and communicate
Hmm.
well. Um, I think the other side of it is you need to be able to compare it to previous information. So it needs to be done on a regular basis to make sure that you've got a comparison or you've got some sort of a figure. Um, like I said, one figure on its own tells you very, very little.
Hmm.
Um, whereas at least if you're getting regular kind of reporting on it, it gives you something then to say, right, okay, are we on track? Are we off track? Are we improving? Are we disimproving? And again, bring in that type of industry average to say, well, the industry average for this particular KPI is X and we're at X minus 10%. So we've a bit of work to do.
Right.
And I think the other side is we need to be really, really clear on how we communicate that.
Hmm.
I think there's many, many ways. I was doing a sales training program this morning, and it was true communication is the response that you get. So sometimes we don't communicate properly, and we kind of the clarity isn't there, and it causes more confusion than the information was supposed to show us in the first place.
Yeah. Actually, one thing sprung to mind, right? So when we do customer satisfactions, Google reviews and things like that, everybody
Mm.
looks at the stars, right? Everybody looks at net promoter score. What is your number in that? One of the things that people forget is what is the commentary in those? So one of the things that we
Mm.
used to do is we used to pull all the comments and put them into a file, and then we would search for keywords. So you'd take out the ands and the ises and all of that. But what are the keywords like doing a word cloud? So what are the
Mm.
key words that were coming out, right? So we used to sit down and look at what were the key words being used by customers. We didn't, right? We did look at the numbers, but then we started to look at the words that were being used, right? So that's
Yeah.
another example of how to look at data in a different way.
Mm. But it's also looking at it from a different perspective. You're not looking at it from the perspective of the business owner. You're taking the customer's language, the customer's words, the customer's experience, and again, it's that how you visualize that. So the word cloud is a great example of that, where you just take all that information and see how many times different words come out, um, and how positive or negative that is towards your business.
Yeah,
Very good.
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, what are some of the challenges in your mind that you face with balancing quantitative insights with quantitative data, and how did you address them, Des?
Um, yeah, as I said, I suppose I'm guilty myself of being more focused on the qualitative rather than the quantitative. And I think it's a question of being able to integrate both types of data into the reporting that you're looking for. Um, you probably need, and again, probably you need to be allowed to mitigate for any biases that you've got as to the relevance of the information. And as you said, the the softer kind of quantitative information and data can often um, you can often have negative bias towards it because you feel it's too soft and that it's not giving you the right information as much as the qualitative is.
Yeah.
But it is equally important, and as you say, the commentary which comes along with it is also equally important. Um, and I think again, it gives you a comprehensive overall analysis of the business, and when you use both quantitative and qualitative data, um, and I think it is a question of just making sure that there is a real understanding of the importance of both and with all the stakeholders.
Okay. All right. Let's flip on to another question. So, how can understanding a person's DISC profile and their why contribute to a more effective leadership and team management within a business?
Look, it's any kind of personality profiling you do, whether it's DISC or why, is always going to improve the communication across the business with whoever you're talking with. However, it's really, really important that if you've got a really good understanding of DISC, for example, that it's your style isn't important. To a degree it is, but it's adjusting that and being able to identify the style of the person that you're talking with or dealing with and adapting to their personality and adapting to their style. And I think that in itself is a real challenge for a lot of people, because they often kind of come across conflict and they come across challenges dealing with certain people instead of adapting their behavior to really understand what that person is looking for and how is the best way to communicate with them. Yeah. So I think anyone in a leadership role or a management role within a business has to really, really be good at adapting their behavior to improve the communication across the team, to get the team aligned. But again, it's by understanding other people's profiles.
Yeah. I was talking to somebody the other day and I said, how can you expect to lead if you don't know yourself first?
Yeah.
So one of the conversations we've been having is, how do you lead? How do you make sure you're inspiring others? If you don't understand who you are first, then how can you lead others? And then you're exactly right. When you sit down and you start talking to individuals, you've got to communicate the way they want to be communicated to. The platinum rule, right? So we all, let's be honest, we are all the center of the universe. Everything revolves around us, right? If you look deeply into yourselves, I don't care who you are, the world revolves around you. So why would you want somebody to talk to you in a different way than you want to be spoken to or engaged with? So understanding somebody's why, understanding the communication profile, if you're able to do that, then you can absolutely get the best out of them. And I think one of the things that leaders forget is, anybody in leadership or anybody trying to influence more than one person, you've got to speak at high DISC. You've got to be able to talk in, directness, right? Task orientated, people orientated, speed or thoughtfulness, right? You've got to be able to mix all of those in and speak at high DISC so that you can so people are coming towards you rather than running away from you.
Yeah, I get it. But I think the important thing to remember is that not every person you come across is going to be trained in DISC or in why. And I think it is taking the traits and the behaviors and how people show up and using that information and making those assumptions. And I think that's another key part of understanding what DISC actually is and how profiling really does allow you to, I suppose, personalize your management of individuals to make sure that you're getting the most out of the team.
All right, so that brings us on to the next question. So in what ways can DISC or why profiles help you align team member strength with business objectives?
Yeah, it's interesting. On the sales training we did earlier on, we spoke about DISC, and we spoke about this whole, what would happen if we had a company that was full of Ds, and what would happen if we had a company full of Cs. And it was interesting because they all got it. They got the fact that, if you had a business that was full of S's, it would be a wonderful place to work. It would be beautiful and social, and it would be great, and it would be amazing. It wouldn't last too long, but it would be amazing while it lasted. Um, but as much as a business full of D's as well would also not work, so the use of these profiles for the suitability of someone's role is really, really important. And to be able to use it as a kind of to enhance someone's performance and to optimize someone's performance is to make sure that you've got the right people in the right seats. And I think, DISC and Why and other tools that are available out there to help us do that are all really, really important. But again, lots of businesses feel that they can recruit, particularly at a senior level, into the business without using this type of tool that's freely available, because it's going to absolutely benefit the overall performance of the business if they get it right at the start. So
yeah, I mean, it's critical in organizational design. You mentioned the right people in the right seat. I talk about having the right bus with the right seat and the right people in it, right? So multiple buses. It's about making sure that you've got intentionally set up your organization, intentionally looking at what you want the different roles to be and where do you go. And it's being intentional about that. And again, one of the challenges that we talk about is when you create an organizational structure, it's somewhat fixed, but in today's world, as you're looking and you're morphing and you're going in different directions, does that structure need to be more fluid? Right. So for example, if you've got a challenger with a D personality, right, that's going to be a tough person, right? As we're driving, do you want that person in the seat when everything's done? They're great for change. They're great for implementing new things. But when that's all done, are they the right person to sit in that seat and run it all? Probably not. Right. So one of the things that we talk about is the fluidity of roles within an organization and making sure we do have the right bus with the right seats and the right people in it so that we can adapt to move in the organization. And then I think the other challenge that we've got that we talk about a lot with HR is people that have grown up in the Google world, social media. A lot of people have been told who they are over the last number of years. They really haven't discovered who they are. So when you're being told by thousands of people that how you should act and how you should interact and how you should think and how you should talk, it's kind of overwhelmed them over the years. And when they sit down and truly identify who they are, it's like a light bulb switches on. It's like, oh, this is why I act the way I act or the way I think, right?
Yeah.
So it's we find it very much on the social media, heavy social media groups that are out there that have grown up with this, that understanding this is critical. And once those light bulbs go off, they're somewhat of a different person, right? They're more confident. They're more focused. They start to enjoy things more because they figured out their purpose and how to communicate. It's just teaching.
Yeah, but I think the other side of it, and you mentioned challenger there in reference to a why profile. But if you've got someone who's a better way person and you've got someone who's a right way person, you can see the clashes there straight away in relation to the right way is now we found the right way, this is the way we do it, and we stick to this. And the better way person is saying, no, but there has to be a better way. And I think we talk about the team's dynamic and we talk about the team's strengths, making sure that they understand how each of us work in that environment or with that particular profile.
Yeah.
And we've said it before, that aha moment to say, okay, now I know why they communicate that way or why they react that way. So I think, again, it just helps with all that type of...
in our office. We have that in our office all the time, right? I mean, it's within my office, I'm a better way person, right? I'm always wanting to improve things, right? And again, when I found my profile, I realized that I was not endearing myself to a number of people because I was always trying to improve stuff when they've spent hundreds of hours making sure that it was right. So I literally went, okay, hands off, right? Leave it alone, stop, right? And let the team do what they need to do,
Hmm.
right? And now literally what they give me is like a paragraph to fix, and that's all I'm allowed to fix. But it
Yeah,
allows me to scratch my itch, right?
but it's funny. I often find myself apologizing when someone says, "Will you have a look at this draft to see what you think?" And you're kind of thinking it's really good, but my better way in me is also going to say, "Well, can you change this or change that, or this reads better, or that might be better." So I think
Yeah,
sometimes you do have to apologize and let
yeah.
people know that that's just the way I am. The way
Oh,
we
am.
are. Live with it, I'm afraid.
There we go. There we go. We all have our crosses to burden.
Yeah.
All right. So, Des, how can leaders use this personal data to resolve conflicts and improve team dynamics in your mind?
I think we've actually covered that off probably in the previous question.
Mhm.
That if there's an understanding of profiles, it will automatically reduce conflict because people will understand why people react a certain way or why people communicate a certain way. So I think understanding and using the data that's available is always going to improve the team dynamics. But again, it's about empathy and understanding people's views. It's about receiving proper tailored feedback and having a process or a system which allows people to give feedback or feed forward, which is the new, obviously, way to look at it. But it has to be a process there to do that, and it has to be done on a consistent basis, and it has to be done in an open and transparent way. And I think that in itself will reduce conflict across industries and across businesses.
So, Des, how do you balance the use of qualitative insights with quantitative data when interpreting customer feedback?
Okay, so I'm going to go back to my SuperQuinn days, many my SuperQuinn and SuperValue days, I suppose. And if you look at the mystery shopper
Mhm.
score, so the mystery shopper score is very much based on a number. It's a photograph, it's a picture in time, and you get a score. So that's your
Mhm.
number. But I think the information that's kind of on the back of that, I think you referenced it earlier on, is it's the it's the words that are used in that report. It's the strength of someone's opinion. It is the detail behind that number, which is probably more important than the actual number itself.
Mhm.
And I think you get a high score, you're always looking for the really positive words and the positive feedback that has given that particular score. Um, if it's a low score that you receive, and again, you're always looking for the negatives. And I think sometimes uh, it gets lost in translation at times that we just focus on the number, rather than the detail that comes in behind it. So I think that's kind of combining both the information that's there, putting a little bit of context behind it, and then creating a balanced report on the back of it. So,
Mhm. Mhm. I'm going to give you another example. So, in the years when I ran quality, one of the things that we always measured was failure rate, right? So, again, we're always looking Lean Sigma. How do we improve? How do we constantly improve quality? And the focus on everything was what the quality was. But we used to articulate it in a negative number. So the quality rate, failure rate was 3%. The failure rate was 3.5%, or the failure rate was 1.9%. And one of the things that I found was we were reporting on the negative, not the positive. So when we went out to the market and we were talking to, customers and partners, we always talked about the failure rate of being X percentage. Well, we flipped that conversation to say our success rate was 98%. Our success rate was 97%, right? So when you flip the narrative over and you're articulating a positive rather than a negative, 98 sounds far more powerful than 2%. So 98% success versus a 2% failure rate, right? And everybody used to articulate the failure rate, not the success rate. So when we used to go in and I used to do presentations, it was like our success rate, our quality rate is at 98%, 98 point whatever the number was. They used to go, wow, that's awesome. But it was the same damn data.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
when you're looking to your point, positive versus negative, right? What are you trying to do with the data? Are you trying to inspire? Are you trying to beat? Right. So the use of the data and how you position the data and how you interpret and communicate the data is overall pretty important.
Mm. No, it is, absolutely. And I think sometimes it can be a bit of a play on that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I have software that I use to assess people's or businesses' profitability, and I reckon I can find up to €1,000, €100,000 in additional profits in your business by using the software to identify the main areas. And my success rate would be 98%, just over 98% of assessments that I do finds this 100,000 in their business.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, I want to try and apologize to the 2% that I wasn't able to help.
Mm.
Or maybe it's congratulate the 2% that I wasn't able to help because I wasn't able to find you €100,000 in your business because you've got the right systems in place and you're tracking your information and you've got all of the right people in your team, and you're really managing upwards, and your communication is good, and your marketing is great, and your follow-up is good, and all of your KPIs are in the right place. Well done. I couldn't find you 100,000 in your business. So, but you're right. It's the same information. It's that 98% versus the 2%.
Yeah. It's how you present it, right? And again, we're not saying be underhanded about it. It's be very transparent. You've used this word a lot today, but be transparent about it. But it's how you position the data and how you communicate it in the right way gives you a different response. And I like where you said, 2%. You can, right? You should be congratulating those people, right? Not going beating yourself up, right? Or wow, that's awesome. Well done. You are in the top 2%. Congratulations, right? Now, my question is, so how do you scale? Right? How do you keep that moving now, right? So Des, let's just flip over to marketing for a quick minute around data. So how has A/B testing revolutionized the way businesses refine their marketing tactics? And what are some of the common mistakes to avoid?
Okay, a really good question. And again, we did reference it in an earlier question earlier in relation to managing your data and being close to the information. So what A/B testing allows people to do is obviously run multiple campaigns across the marketing platforms to really assess which campaigns are performing better, which campaigns are getting the most engagement, which campaigns are leading to people actually clicking through and either booking appointments or taking some sort of action, which is the main reason why you've got a campaign going in the first place. And I think if you've got someone who is measuring that and who is taking the information and responding to that information, give it a couple of weeks, maybe you go in and you see which one is performing better. You either stop the other one and you do another A/B testing on another piece of marketing, or you tweak the one that's not working a little bit. There's something that's just not right with it. But I think it's like everything else. You've got to make sure that you're in control of it. You've got to make sure that you've got someone who is competent in going in, having a look at the figures, looking at the results, and making informed decisions with the information that's there. Like, it's evidence based. It's not just making stuff up. It's using the information that's being given across the platforms, and it is very much judging the market responsiveness to any campaign that goes out there. So I think it stops people blindly throwing thousands of euros or thousands of dollars into marketing and then hoping it's going to work. But by A/B testing, it kind of takes the hope out of it, and it becomes definitely more strategic.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest challenges is people try and do it themselves. They're not experts in this space, right? Lots of people have gone off and they're experts in their business for specific areas, but marketing is an area of expertise that requires knowledge. It requires both quantitative and qualitative data when they're looking at markets. And honestly, when I have this conversation with clients, it's who is your marketing company, right? Who are you employing to do this the right way? Because do you have a marketing degree? Have you been successful in this in the past? No, that's usually the conversation. So why are you doing it? I literally had this conversation last Friday. Why are you making a decision that is not being driven by the data? And this individual was trying to offer a different package than all the data that was suggesting. And I literally turned around to him and I said, so what does the data say? This. Okay. So to the marketing company that was on the call, it's like, how many clients are running this? And she was like, 95% of our clients are running this. And what's the data you're seeing on average? This is the data. Okay. How many have done exactly what this current customer is asking to do? They've all done it. And what was the results? It didn't work. So then it was a flip back to, so why do you believe that you doing it is going to be any different? And it was that look of, follow the data.
Right. That's what we would call a uh-oh moment. That wasn't an aha moment.
No,
that was definitely an oh no. Yeah.
Yes. So, but again, it's, one of the things I love A/B testing, right? You can A/B test anything, right? It's just sort of A and B. But to your point, you've got to clarify what you're testing, what your desired outcomes are, what are the numbers. And if it isn't in your area of expertise, get somebody to do it for you. It'll save you a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of effort.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%. And I think, even if you take it back to the retail environment that we both would have worked in for some time, like A/B, we used to A/B test all the time. We didn't call it that, of course, but you'd put different offers up, you'd put different prices on them, you'd put different packages together, and which ones are working, which ones aren't working, because the ones that aren't working are just taking up space. So we got to change it, because real estate, as we used to call it within the retail industry, was really, really important, and you couldn't afford to have something that wasn't working sitting on the shelf. So you needed to get it off pretty quickly. So
yeah. All right. So I think we've got that's time we've got today. So Des, as always, thank you for sharing your insights today. I think we've covered a lot of ground, especially around integrating KPIs, strategic decision making, some other conversations. Just kind of understanding the personal and customer data, and refining marketing strategies with the data approach. So thank you for helping us with that today. I think the key takeaway from our conversations is pretty darn clear, right? Data-driven decisions are really essential for business success. Data provides a reliable foundation, helping us make strategic decisions that are less influenced by emotion and assumptions. So by leveraging both qualitative and quantitative data, executives, managers, leaders can all gain a competitive view of the business performance and navigate the challenges more effectively. So before we wrap up, do you have any final thoughts or advice on leveraging data or in business decision making?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go back to one of the things that I said at the very, very start. The closer you are to your information, the closer you are to your data, the closer you are to your figures, the better decisions you're going to make. And my view on that has just been, I suppose, strengthened in this particular kind of interview, that use whatever data is available, whether it's quantitative, whether it's qualitative, whether you're using financial KPIs or non-financial KPIs, and whether it's in assessing our people. There are profiling tools available to help you make better decisions. And I think, like I said, they're the non-financial KPIs that are very, very important, which often get overlooked because they're not the KPI that's driving the success of the business. And I think, look, it's a combination of using whatever information you've got to help you make those key strategic informed decisions.
All right. Yeah, absolutely. So once again, Des, thanks for your time today and your valuable insights. We look forward to seeing you on another topic real soon.
Thanks, Andrew. Cheers.